Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith of the New York City metropolitan area. Two things we ask you to do all the time: download the app, share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content, not just the front line with Joe and Joe. And if you like what we do, we're all over social media, so you might be actually watching this interview on social media, X, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you see our ugly mugs. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, share. You know the drill. Do all that fun stuff. Help us out so we could reach a wider audience. Now, Joe and I say on the show all the time, not because we're anything special, but we're able to get some really good guests on our show, and by the grace of Almighty God, and we're talking about things that are relevant to you out there in America, okay? And Joe and I can't think of any other way to go into the breach more relevant than higher education in America. And we have the perfect person to talk to us here about higher education, and that's Mark Bauerlein. And many of you have known Mark and seen him on YouTube and the like. Having said that, Mark Bauerlein is a senior editor at First Things and professor of English at Emory University, where he's taught since earning his PhD in English at UCLA in 1989. For 2 years, from 2003 to 2005, he served as director of the Office of Research and Analysis at the National Endowment for the Arts. His books include Literary Criticism and Autopsy, The Pragmatic Mind, Explorations in the Psychology of Belief, and The Dumbest Generation. Joe, I found that one to be the best, the best titled one. The Dumbest Generation: How the Digital Age Stupefies Young Americans and Jeopardizes Our Future. That came out in 2008. His essays have appeared in Partisan Review, Wilson Quarterly, Commentary, New Criterion. His commentaries and reviews have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Boston Globe, Weekly Standard, you name it. Mark's articles have been in there. Mark Bauerlein, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe, brother.
Gentlemen, I'm glad to join you.
And thank you again. You're welcome. Joe Resinello, I'm going to hand it over to you and we'll get rocking.
Mark, we always begin with a prayer in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin of virgins, our mother. To you we come, for you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother, the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us, amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Well, Mark, just to date myself, I graduated college in 1992 at a fine Jesuit university, University of Scranton. I went on to Harvard on the Hudson, St. Peter's College, another fine Jesuit university, and things have changed since then. And I'm sure you have a lot to say about what you've seen. What's happened? I mean, where to begin? I mean, what did it used to be? A college education. I mean, to be honest, I have 5 young kids. I even wonder, is it worth it? What happened?
Well, first of all, Joe and Joe, neither are you millennials, right? Gen Z?
No. Right?
I don't even know what the
Sometimes
heck. I'll be honest with you. All these things. What is? I don't even know what that is.
I'm born in 1967, so that's all I know.
1970. I don't even know these terms. Cisgender.
You guys are Gen X. I was going to say, no millennials allowed on this call. Okay, no millennials. All right. So back to, hey, things have changed. Boy, it just seems in the last 5 years, things have drastically changed in higher ed and in this country. But the thing to remember about higher ed, there are really 2 universities now in America. You've got the hard sciences side of the university, the STEM fields, the medical schools, nursing, School of Public Health, hospitals. Many universities now run hospitals as well. And those really amount to, in many schools, just a biomedical industrial complex fueled by tons of federal money and grant money from Ford Foundation and elsewhere. And those universities really have become the drivers of research, of breakthroughs now in areas of medicine, technology. And those, we can say, a whole lot of that is a success story of the American university in the last 100 years. And then you got the softer side of the humanities, the arts and humanities in higher education. And when we look at those areas, we see deterioration, degradation, and decline. First of all, empirical decline. Students are voting with their feet. I mean, just a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, the fields of English, history, all the foreign languages, classics, linguistics, and philosophy, sort of the core traditional fields of the humanities, all those fields combined drew a little more than 4% of all bachelor's degrees given. Now, just for a point of comparison, in 1970, English collected 1 in 12 bachelor's degrees awarded. So English was a core field, and you had general ed requirements in English, the freshman composition, and usually a literature requirement as well. So English was the center. Now it's not 1 out of 12, less than 1 in 50 college degrees, bachelor's degrees are in the field of English. These fields have become window dressing. They're marginal. Students are not enrolling in those courses. For most students now, the humanities really in their full college experience amount to a general ed requirement course. Maybe I got to take something in US history, and then they're gone. They never come back to those fields. Now, why has that deterioration happened? Why was the core experience of higher education lost, or they shifted? Resources, student enrollments, the public discourse. How many political leaders now say we got to get more STEM? We need engineers. You hear that all the time. How many of them say we need more French majors? You know, we need more creative writing majors. Nothing. So this is my field. This is what I've seen in my 30 years as a professor. When I got to Emory University in 1989, we had about 350 English majors. Now it's about 150, and that's a national trend going on. And why has that happened? Well, there are a few reasons, multiple reasons. One, the cost of higher education has skyrocketed, as everyone knows. When I went to UCLA as an undergrad, it was the quarter system, the 3 10-week terms, not semesters. And it took me 5 years and a few summer schools to graduate. And it wasn't only because I was inebriated much of my freshman year. It was also, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I bounced around, math, take some Italian, philosophy, film, and finally settled on English in my my 3rd year of college. I started the major, and I could do that. College could be sort of an exploratory thing because, and this is what kills young people when I tell them this, the tuition at UCLA was about $500 a year. And so college could be, again, a more open-ended, try this, try that. An extra year wasn't really going to hit me in the pocketbook. And I worked through college. I didn't have any money. My family didn't have any money to pay for a high tuition. Now you look at, Emory is $70,000 a year. And that's average for the elite schools. You can't afford to say, I wonder, maybe I'll try this. Maybe I will look into that. It harms the humanities. And when you look at the cost, you also see a careerist motivation creeping in. I got to think about getting a job right out of school. I may have student loans. I got to get working. And so those majors that lead right into a career. What do you become when you're a psychology major? A psychologist. What do you become when you're an English major? An Englishist? That doesn't exist. So, I read a lot of Henry James books. Well, what are you going to do with that, pal? So there is that, the money pressure, the financial pressure, the career pressures push people away from the humanities. Also, the rise of computers and screens mean that kids, teenagers read fewer books. And if you're not a book reading kid, you're not going to go into heavy book reading majors. You're not going to go into a field where you got to read Vanity Fair, Thackeray's novels, 600, 700 pages. No, Henry James's later novels, that's a mouthful. You just don't have the habit of sitting in a chair for an hour uninterrupted reading a book. the screen time, shortening those attention spans, it's going to harm those majors that require long reading. And finally, I'll say, you go into a lot of these humanities classes now, man, oh man, what a downer. Okay, what a drag. I mean, I'm a young guy, and I read those Hemingway stories, you know, the Nick Adams stories in our time, and I'm young, and I'm growing out into the world, and they say manhood may be an issue for me. How do I behave with dignity in a world that seems to be kind of falling apart? And you go into the English class, you sign up because the Hemingway's on the syllabus, and then you start hearing about patriarchy and gender bending, blah blah blah. I mean, what a drag, man. I'm a girl. I love Elizabeth Bennet, Pride and Prejudice. I had a high school English teacher who inspired me to read Jane Austen. And then I take this class, and we got to have, you know, the 19th century literature of colonialism and the identity politics. It just, I mean, you don't make jokes in identity politics classrooms, right? It's no fun. And if it's not fun, you're not going to stick around. If it's not inspiring, if you don't find Milton's Satan character, man, this guy is good. He is a wily, manipulative, clever, self-involved, sinful character. And I really enjoy reading about him. He's wild and crazy. That's what you want to get, a little charisma in that class. Well, go listen to some English professors, younger ones these days, especially. They've got that identity chip on their shoulder. It's no fun. And everyone's scared now. I mean, I taught Huck Finn all the time. People don't teach Huck Finn anymore. Got the N-word in it. You're going to get in trouble. And if you have a class of 35 kids, and 2 kids, I would teach the narrative of Frederick Douglass. Douglass, one of the great heroes and great rhetoricians in all of American history, got a lot of the N-word in it. You know, you got a few slaves being whipped. If 2 out of those 35 students in your class, 33 loved all that stuff, 2 of them were offended, were triggered, and they file a complaint with the administration on racial grounds, you got to deal with that for the next few months. The administration has to take those things seriously because it's federal, racial, and you're going to have to explain yourself, and you probably end up writing a note of saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anyone. It doesn't go anywhere, but you know, it's a pain. And the process is the punishment. And that is going to squelch, right? A lot of your teaching, a lot of the interesting stuff is going to be lost. It's going to be a sanitized, politically correct classroom. And for a whole lot of students, that feels like a straitjacket, and they're not going to stick around. So I would point to those 3 things: the decline of the soft campus, right? The hard campus, money's pouring in. A lot of really smart kids, a lot of foreign kids are going into those fields. The soft areas, they're just withering at this point. And it's just a terrible shame.
Mark Bauerlein joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Mark is the senior editor at First Things and professor of English at Emory University. So, Mark, let me ask you this. Joe and I, you know, we get accused sometimes like, oh, you're just a couple of conspiracy theorists, whatever the case might be. Let me see if I could frame this question this way. Gramsci, the 20th century communist, he recommended at the time, I guess it was in the 1920s, that you needed to infiltrate the institutions. You need to get in the institutions, corrupt them from within, whether it be the church, whether it be the press, whether it be the government, whether it be the university. All right. Why do I bring that up? How much of this is actually deliberate? This destruction. I mean, I look at it this way. My sister went to Fordham University. She studied philosophy. Okay. She got a real education. Okay, she knows Aquinas and the great philosophers in the Western tradition. Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say well, first of all, who the heck takes philosophy anymore? They're probably not required much. So my question is, how much in your mind, if at all, tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, is this dumbing down in universities a deliberate attack?
Well, let's put it this way. The humanities, traditionally understood, imparted the tradition. It was about Western civilization. It was about the King James Bible, one of the all-time great works of literature, apart from the theology, the Bible, great work of literature, and everyone read it. This was understood to be part of the formation of every college student. You are acquainted with the great works and ideas of the past, and it was a coherent lineage. It was an inheritance. It was the repository of all the materials that we hold dear: beauty, sublimity, ideas, transcendence. The humanities were the transfer point. If you are a Gramscian Marxist, you've got to dismantle that tradition in order to create a better world. To build the future, you got to destroy the past. You have to take the hold of the past away from young people. You have to reform them so that they're ready to engage in the great march of progress. If they are committed to the founding fathers, if they idolize George Washington and Thomas Jefferson because they read the Declaration of Independence and they tracked the conduct of George Washington during the Revolutionary War, you've got a commitment to the past. You formed a conviction that upholds the traditional sense of America. We got to discredit that, guys. We got to take them down. We have to disconnect people from the foundations so that we can direct them in the progressive way. So I think what you had was a fairly small group of leftists that infiltrated the university, the humanities departments, and other areas. Schools of education were particularly vulnerable because the left understands, as does the Catholic Church in its better moments, you get them while they're young, right? You go after the kids. That's where we find the vulnerability of a society. Reach the children. So education, the public schools, all the way down into elementary schools. We are going to use that to pull the children away from the parents, pull them away from their country, pull them away from their religion, their God. And we're going to give them the secular, progressive outlook on things. That was a small group of leftists on campus. What really annoyed me, and because I was one of them for a long time, is the liberals, the sort of the moderate liberals who, they vote Democrat. They may go to church, some of them even. They don't like identity politics very much. They're uncomfortable with that. They're all big on, content of character rather than color of skin. And they outnumbered the lefties on campus, and they outnumbered conservatives, that's for sure. But I watched as 3 identity politicians in a room of 25, and the other 22 are liberals. They could pull those liberals in any direction they wanted because the liberals were so frightened, panicky over the charge of sexist, racist, whatever, xenophobe, take your pick. A liberal is frightened to death of what the left is going to say. about him. And that's one of the things that pushed me to the right. Stop this nonsense. What is this? Defend your own field. Defend Shakespeare. I mean, I've heard people say, "Why should we teach Shakespeare instead of Toni Morrison?" And no one would object. I say, what is wrong with you people? At what point did you lose your conviction about things? So, in answer to your question, Joe, I think there was a small group who was quite deliberate and canny about undermining the institution, and then a much larger group of spineless, mushy liberals who let them do it and sort of said, well, I'm going to teach my classes the way I always have. And I know these leftists, they can be, they're sort of in too much of a hurry. I kind of agree with their broad aims. I don't like really their aggressive methods, but I'm not gonna make an issue out of it myself. That was sort of the compromise that the liberals made. And you want to say, look where we are now. Look where we are.
That's exactly right. Mark Bauerlein is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. One of our problems, and I'm going to hand it over to Joe. We'll keep the conversation going. Is that okay? There's one thing where you might point at a radical professor at one of these universities. Let's say it's Stanley Fish or Michel Foucault or whatever the case might be. But then what they do in their classroom doesn't stay in their classroom, because then they get to the malleable kids and tell them, no, you got to go protest that professor over there because he's not teaching the way I want him to teach. So then at one point you get protests against Professor Charlie Rice at Notre Dame University for, let's say, sticking to traditional, traditional modes of teaching kids. That's my little rant, but let me hand it over to Joe. Mark Bauerlein. If you're just joining us, Mark is the senior editor at First Things, professor of English at Emory University. We do, everyone out there, recommend go to First Things and subscribe. Joe and I, this conversation is about education, okay? And Joe and I say all the time, we have on people like Mark. Why? Because Joe and I are so smart? No, because we learn as much as our audience does. So I want to know what's going on. I want to be educated. So I subscribe to First Things, and I subscribe to a lot of different places where people like Mark are educating us and raising our consciousness. Joe Resinello.
I want to talk cost, Mark. Numbers that I've read, as of now, 44 million Americans owe roughly 1.75 trillion. Give or take a trillion. We could talk numbers all day. It's a lot of bread. Obviously, the cost of tuition has mushroomed. When I was at Scranton in 92, it was 18 grand. Now it's close to 60, just to give people some.
And Seton Hall's probably right there with it, because I went to Seton Hall. Right there.
A lot of money. I have 5 kids. They're young. I will be a pauper. There's no question about that. With that said, this is how I see it. You tell me if I'm wrong. The government gives money to kids like water, no matter what you're going to study, no matter where you go to school. The universities know that. So they continue to jack up the prices because they know they're going to get the money, and the only losers are the kids. My father was a barber. I took loans to go to Scranton. I was able to pay them back. Because, to be honest with you, it wasn't that much money. But now, if that working class kid who goes to, say, a Catholic school, I'll just pick a place in Connecticut, the dad, say, is a UPS driver, the mom's a nurse, they work hard, and he wants to go to Villanova, and it costs close to 80 grand. The kid wants to study, I don't know, we'll call it accounting. He's not superior, but he's not a dummy. He has a 3.0. He gets an accounting degree. He owes $300,000. He's going to be living in his parents' house till he's 40. Is it worth it? Is it a Ponzi scheme? Is the government in on it with the university? The only losers, the kids. And then Joe Biden pretends like he wants to give the money back when he's in on the game. Am I wrong?
Mark, I'm just going to preface, in about 2 minutes, I'm going to cut you off to go to a break, and then we'll pick it up on the other side. But go ahead.
Sure. The Biden thing, well, that's a payoff. I mean, the Democrats have to keep the youth vote. The youth vote has been about 2-to-1 Democrat in recent elections, and this is basic clientism, right? We're giving you this, you vote for us. It's a sheer political calculation on the administration's part. Why do universities charge so much? Because they can. And how can they charge so much? Because people will pay it. And how will people pay it? Because the government will give them student loans. And when they've been told over and over again, you must get a college degree, you must get a college degree. If you don't get a college degree, you are a complete loser. You are not going to be successful in the 21st century unless you get your college degree. I mean, that was pounded and pounded by W's administration as well as Obama's administration, and they sold the country on a bill of goods. I mean, look, we got about 1/3, well, maybe 35, 36% of the population who have bachelor's degrees. Another way they forced them into it was a lot of jobs said bachelor's degree required, when you didn't need a bachelor's degree to do this job. But it all seemed like, yeah, it's a system, right? And you got a lot of people profiting from this system. The politicians can say, we're giving you this so you can have the opportunity to go into college. The colleges are saying, we're so important in your lives. It's amazing. Yeah, we're charging this much, but if you don't, you're done. Your life is going to be a failure. And of course, all the media's kids go to college. They make everyone think like, if you don't go to college and get that degree, you're part of the great unwashed. And we know how much elites in the media have contempt for Americans. One reason why they hated Donald Trump voters was because a lot of those voters were not college degree people. When Trump said after the Nevada primary, I love poorly educated voters, poorly educated people. Oh, that was one of the most offensive things that a media elite could ever hear. Praise for dumb people, praise for love for high school graduates. And you got to remember, these people haven't heard a national politician say something nice about them for a long time. Every time Barack Obama opened his mouth, they felt the disdain dripping from his chin for them. So I think that yeah, the kid who got the sociology degree and he's got even 100,000, 80,000 in student loans, he's sunk for 10 years. He can't move forward in his life with those kinds of payments. And now the government is again trying all these fixes to alleviate the pain that they themselves have been a big part of causing.
Absolutely. Mark Bauerlein's joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Mark, so First Things, people go on firstthings.com. Do you have any particular social media where people can follow you? Are you on X or anything like that?
Yeah, I do X. I'm not even sure what my X handle is. Mark Bauerlein is a pretty unusual name. You could always type that in. I do the podcast at First Things twice a week. So love to have more people tune in, focused on books.
Absolutely. So we would encourage everyone out there, please go on firstthings.com, give them your email and subscribe, and you'll get a lot of great information. I mean, we're not just saying that because Mark is here. Believe me, these are relevant, relevant articles and podcasts and things you're going to want to know about. So Mark Bauerlein is joining us here. We're discussing higher education on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial. Stick around. We have another great segment with Mark Bauerlein. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We're way in the breach. And when you're talking about higher education in America, you are in the breach. But we're in the breach with the right guy. Mark Bauerlein's a senior editor at First Things and professor of English at Emory University. And that's what we're discussing, some of the insanity that we now call higher education. Mark, Joe, if it's okay, I want to start this segment off, okay? Joe and I are big. Well, first of all, I went to public grammar school. Joe, you went to public grammar school, right?
Public Catholic, but public.
Yeah. I went to public grammar school. I will say, and this is not an exaggeration, Mark Bauerlein, that the 8th graders, when I graduated 8th grade, the kids that I graduated with are surpass the average high school student nowadays. Public education in the 1970s in Newark, New Jersey was a solid education. You learned what you needed to learn. There was discipline. You couldn't just run wild in the hallways. Your parents got called, and when your parents got called, you ran for the hills, okay? You actually did learn something. Okay. And everybody I graduated with, nearly everybody I graduated 8th grade with, okay, went on to be productive citizens. Those people that you say, people like Barack Obama have disdain for, the firemen, the cops, this and that. Anyway, here's my thing is that Joe and I, we interviewed Jacob Imam. He started a school, St. Joseph the Worker College. Okay. The idea is this, and I think you're going to know where I'm going with this. The philosopher worker, the philosopher tradesman. They have a core curriculum of philosophy, and they teach a trade. And Joe and I happen to think that for a lot of students in America, some of whom are going to have that $100, $200, $300,000 in student loan debt with their philosophy degree from wherever, okay, that it might be better for them to have gone to a trade school to learn a trade and also learn real philosophy at the same time. Mark, I think you know where I'm going. What are your thoughts on that type of model of education?
Well, first of all, what you began with, Joe, about how since you were in grammar school that the quality is inferior of the graduate. No. There's no way. I mean, how is it? It couldn't be possible that billions and billions and billions of dollars would be pouring into the public school. All these brilliant new theories about social emotional learning and emotional intelligence that all these things coming out of the ed schools. Well, of course, the high school graduate is far superior to the high school graduate in the early 70s. Don't you agree with him, Joe?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what,
Certainly.
Miss Rinaldi and Miss Gerardo, if they were teaching 2nd and 3rd grade respectively nowadays, would both be arrested. But go ahead, Mark.
there we go. Yeah, I think my ideal classroom today in my ideal 8th grade classroom would be go in and unplug every stinking computer screen in the room, pull out all those desks and tables, get them out of there, bring back those old wooden desk and chair units, screw them into the floor in rigid columns, put the kids in those seats, and let's get Sister Mary Alice, who's 75 years old, to walk up and down the aisle, up and down the rows with a very heavy ruler in her hand, looking for signs of laxity and inattention. Isn't that a perfect classroom, gentlemen?
I would agree with you.
I
Very
had
good.
Sister Mary D'Annunzio, and she was not playing games. She was 5 feet tall and 5 feet wide, and she was not playing games.
You know, Dana Joya, who was the head of the Arts Endowment when I was there, and Dana went on to do many other things, a professor at USC. Dana actually grew up as a poor kid in Hawthorne, California, who didn't seem to have any prospects of going anywhere in that world. He attributes it all to the nuns in his Catholic school, elementary school through high school. The nuns did their job and took this kid and got him on track. The vocational, guys, people talk about this. When you are able to do something with your hands that shows some skill and expertise, it's a great feeling. A guy who can change his oil on his car by himself, which isn't that hard, right? If you know where to look for that plug, and get that oil filter out of there, he's got a competence, and it builds, again, confidence. It also connects you to the world in a way, the concrete, basic realities of things. It gets you away from that stinking screen. If you drive along the road and you see a car pulled off to the side and someone standing there, and you pull over and say, "You need any help?" "Yeah, I need to change this tire is flat. I don't know what to do." If you know how to change a tire, you're a hero. If you don't know how to change the tire, if you then you are no good at all. And the thing is, the world pays for these things. A bricklayer, hey guys, how much do you pay a plumber for an hour these days?
Forget it.
$100 at least.
So to fix a leaky faucet, you're an asset. You are a value in your community. I mean, you call an electrician, you don't schedule him, he schedules you. He'll squeeze you in. That's where it is. It's a seller's market in a lot of vocational training areas. And you don't need to go get that 4-year degree. You don't need student loan. Often it's a 1-year apprentice program, and then you work for someone in that field, and you sort of, again, the apprenticeship continues. And when you ask people who work in those fields, they actually like their jobs. The elite world says, ugh, dirty hands. That's just menial labor. I would willing to bet, I haven't seen comparisons, but I would bet that a carpenter has better job satisfaction than 9 out of 10 professors that I've met in my career. They feel great. Again, satisfaction with building something well, fixing a problem, completing the job, and stepping back and looking at it and said, job well done. I'm going to go home and pop a beer and feel good.
And well, here's the thing too, Mark Bauerlein joining us to the front line with Joe and Joe. I look at it this way. My experiences with Teamsters, okay? What about just important functions? Like that, what they would call menial jobs, okay? My father loaded trucks for 35 years, okay? What about the longshoreman who has to take all the goods and services, all the goods and products that you rely on, Mr. Elitist, okay? That you want to take your wife to the store or the mall to go and buy. Well, that stevedore is taking that product out of the belly of that ship, or my old man's unloading a truck where those products are going to get. That's a menial job. Well, tell you what, you go unload the truck then. You go and here's another thing too. Where do they get this idea that the working man doesn't read? My father read hundreds of books in his life. The only thing that makes me even remotely want to read a book is that my father read so many books. Okay. He was just a working guy. He had an opportunity to go to college. He chose not to, thank God, because his siblings that went to college all turned out to be wacko liberals. All right. My aunts and uncles. But the thing is, but he was just as educated as they were because he read. I don't understand. Like, I don't know why, Mark. I'll put it like this to you. I don't know why we're so unwilling to fight against these elites. You mentioned Obama. They ooze with disdain for people. When you say, well, good. Well, you go fix your own leaky faucet. You go and build your own house. You go and unload the truck that's got the products you want to buy. If you're not willing to do that, then shut up. I'm sorry for a rant, Mark, but that's my view.
Watch them freak out when a sewage line backs up, And
oh yeah,
the funny thing is, they become helpless. They become children. They have to go get the help for this. And yeah, it's a wake up call, learning these things. And one wonders why more state politicians haven't put pressure on schools to build the vocational side, right? To build the trades, the schools. Don't push them into college. We don't need, something, we have probably too many college graduates today in America. What we need welders, we need electricians and plumbers and carpenters, we need bricklayers, all those things that seem so contrary to the information economy. The new knowledge, the 21st century digital revolution. Well, look, the toilet still needs to work. All right. The digital isn't going to fix that. A whole lot of these, a robot can't come to your house and find that leak in the roof. You need these people. And again, it's a confidence thing as well. It's nice to be needed, right? It's remunerative to be needed. I mean, I came out with a PhD at UCLA in the late 80s. There were way too many English PhDs than there were jobs. Okay. The job market in philosophy has been horrible for decades. Why are you producing all of these overeducated people, overeducated in terms of word and number, right? SAT skills. We don't need that many of these people. We need people to work machinery. We need people to they're getting rid of truck drivers with the automated, but why? Well, again, a robot doesn't need healthcare, so there's a big push to eliminate those people, but we're not there yet. We need truck drivers. I mean, I see signs all the time on the trucks. You want to work for us? We're ready. Bring in. So these people, I know guys who got PhDs in English, and what did they do? They went on the job market. They couldn't get a job. Year after year, they couldn't get a regular tenure track job. So what did they do? They took adjunct jobs. So in a big city, because they all want to live in big cities, they work at 3 different colleges teaching freshman English at $4,000, $5,000 per course, which when you add it all up doesn't amount to really much more than minimum wage. And they drive from campus to campus, bouncing around Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday classes, trying to cobble together an academic career, and they're just scrambling. Okay, they get no respect. They have no prestige. They get no positive feedback except from the occasional undergraduate who thanks them for learning to write better sentences. Why would you do this? Why would you do this when you can have gone into somewhere else where you're wanted? All right, people are going to call you and ask you to come. You're not always begging all the time. So I don't get it. But again, they've been brainwashed by this knowledge economy thinking that says you must go to college. Big mistake.
Well, that's why Joe and I try to, have these conversations, Mark Bauerlein, this way. People understand. I remember I know people who I love dearly, but like when you say things like people don't have to go to college, their brains explode. It's like, what do you mean you have to go to college? No, you don't. You just described it, Mark Bauerlein. You could go out and a much more fulfilling life. Okay, if you're out there, my 2 cousins are contractors in New Jersey. Okay, they live a very fulfilling life, and the reason why is for what you just said, because they build things. That's why. Let me hand it over. Go ahead, Mark.
Let me mention one thing, Joe. The professional liberal, the educated liberal, looks upon a working class Trump supporter and says the only reason that dumbbell truck driver votes for Trump is because he just doesn't have enough education. He hasn't taken enough college in order to become like me, because all educated people will think the same way. That's the liberal arrogance you see all the time.
Absolutely. Joe Resinello, where do you want to go?
Mark, Joe and I come from similar backgrounds. Actually, our fathers went to high school together. He's my brother-in-law. My father was a barber, first generation American. Joe's folks, also first generation. Joe's mom came from Italy. Working people. We go to college. We were raised Catholic. I went to a Catholic school. I was in a college, I guess you would call it prep track. Some kids did pretty well. Some went to the Ivy League. And they lost their faith. You have kids that grew up in families just like us, Irish kids, Polish kids, Italian kids, hardworking families. They were raised a certain way. They thought a certain way. Then they went to school. And I talk to them now at reunions. You would think that we completely never knew each other. And this is what's happening. They embrace this idea of social justice activism. They throw out religion. In my case, they had religion before they went in. They came out, they didn't. Is that the formula? Or some of them basically have a disdain for organized religion going in? I mean, I could just speak from my experience, from my background. They had religion going in. They came out, they have nothing. And I spend money for that. That's another thing. I tell my wife that. I'm going to spend $80,000 to send my kid to lose the faith that we practice every single day in my house. And then he's going to destroy himself in his life for 40 years and maybe figure it out when he's 70, after he destroys himself, his wife, his kids by cockamamie ideas, which we see on television. And then it could be like, damn, I had that idea when I was 16.
Think about the transition from high school to college. Often you're going hundreds and hundreds of, or thousands of miles away. So you are being disconnected from family, from neighborhood, from friends, from church. And for an 18-year-old, that can be rather isolating. So you get to college and you're looking to find new friends. You're looking for a girlfriend, a boyfriend. Your parental influence has waned. If you're there on the campus, you may find very few people share your faith. The Catholic Church there on campus may be quite marginal, unimportant, and sad to say, the spiritual leaders of those campus priests programs, they are not strong representatives of the faith because they've got to live in a secular universe. They are not going to open their mouths and offer a open biblical interpretation of same-sex marriage. If they do, they'll get in trouble. There will be protests and marches, and the administration may even want to shut them down for their hate, right? You don't want to talk much about abortion from a church, the Catholic understanding. You're going to present then a fairly soft kind of social justice Catholicism that won't get you in trouble. And the thing is, if a kid comes out of a strong, firm Catholic faith, that kid is going to be actually disappointed. Come on, I'm living in this totally secular world. A lot of stuff is going on college campuses that kind of, runs against my beliefs. And I'm coming to you and you're kind of wishy-washy. I'm 18 years old. I need strength. My father isn't around. I need some father figures here. My priest is gone. He was great. And now I'm with you. Come on. And if you're not going to stand up for it, am I going to stand up for it by myself? I got a girlfriend, she's not Catholic. I like her. I like to kiss her. Well, I can't really be a strong Catholic with her. She's either not interested, or it could be she is even offended by my Catholicism. So you got a lot of social pressures. It's a secular institution, aggressively so. And the little bit of Catholicism that you might have preserved on campus, it's just weak. It's weak.
Absolutely.
After a few years, again, a lot of these kids are insecure, having left home in a new place. They're uncertain, right? And
Mark, let me ask you this. We only have about 8 minutes left, but this is important. Not that what we've talked about now is not important, but
Yeah.
but Joe and I, we're not doom and gloom guys here. Okay. We have hope for humanity. All right. We are Catholic, ergo we have hope. All right. What would you think are, again, we'll love to have you back at a future time to talk more, but what would you think are some of the potential solutions to start righting the ship of higher education in America?
Well, I confess, despair is a sin, and it's one that I have to fight, all the time. But look, you find gems. There are diamonds in the rough out there. I'm here at a townhouse of Belmont Abbey College. Belmont Abbey is a great place, and it's holding firm to the Catholic, the traditional conservative Catholic way. There are other schools that are holding pretty steady as well. Benedictine, Ave Maria, Wyoming Catholic out there. Stop sending your money to these institutions that don't like you. Stop.
You hit it right on the head. I say that all the time, Mark. I agree with you 100%. 100%.
I mean, Notre Dame allows a drag queen show, a while back. What the hell are you doing? Well, Notre Dame hired a lot of secular atheist professors over the 80s and 90s and aughts. I have two former colleagues who went to Notre Dame who didn't have a whisper of a molecule of Catholicism in their entire bodies. Notre Dame hired them, took them from Emory. Don't support these places. Find the school. Don't send your kids there. Find the schools that are going to make your kids' faith firm, because that's going to leave them happier human beings. They're going to want to get out of college, and they'll be interested in getting married and forming families. You know, the secular kids leaving the top, you know, the Ivies, they don't want to get married and have families. No. And a lot of them are going to be miserable when they're 50 years old. That's for sure. We see that already.
Well, we see a lot of videos on YouTube of 30-year-old women who are saying how wonderful their lives are because they don't have children, because they're not married.
What a horrible message to give an 18-year-old girl, but they get it. Yeah, you're right. All the time. So things like the classical education movement is very strong now at the high school level. These schools are growing like crazy. There's the Catholic classical education. Send your kids to those schools. Give your resources to the places that are going to hold the line on the
Mark,
faith.
how realistic is it? I want to throw this out there on a purely political level. How realistic is it to demand of your elected representatives that they abolish the Department of Education, or at the very least defund higher education in America? Meaning, if you're going to send your kid to a Newman-less school, all right, I don't want my tax money going to Harvard or Yale or Princeton or any of these schools. I want my politicians to say, no, you don't get any more federal dollars. Is that realistic at all?
Well, let's put it this way. I think we have momentum right now because there's a great deal of dissatisfaction with higher education and the cost. And we have at the state level lots of moves, such as the elimination of DEI programs in colleges and universities in the state and in some state offices as well. Wouldn't it be nice if 20 Catholic priests came out and did a protest at some college campus that is doing drag show and kids are invited? Wouldn't that mean, you know, state something? Come on, the Catholic Church should be much stronger on upholding the faith and being more open about it in public life. I think that would go a long way.
Mark, because we want to be part of the barbecue.
Political power.
We want to get invited to the barbecue. And you mentioned something. You talk about why people send their kids to these schools, because they want to get their Starbucks coffee and brag about their kid going to blah, blah, blah school, this blah, blah, blah school. They go to these schools, and frankly, it's a rite of passage. What? To destroy your kid? To destroy him or her? To get stupid ideas, to come home and say you're a giraffe? I'm a cat? No, I'm not spending 80 grand for my kid to come home and tell me he or she's a cat. Not happening. I want my kid to be happy. I want my kid to have a normal, satisfied life. And frankly, it's not happening. You work, please. I mean, I have eyes, so do you. Is it working?
Mark, we have about 2 minutes left. You have the floor.
Well, Joseph, look, I think the understanding is spreading. I think the disillusionment with the whole elite success program, it's still strong, but episodes such as those 3 college presidents testifying before Congress, that was a humiliation for the elite campuses. The thing we want to do is have people at the small Catholic colleges that remain true to the magisterium to be forthright. Don't listen to the consultants telling you, don't talk about chastity so much. You need to get your applications up. Forget those people. Get away from them. And let's get the crosses up in the hallways and in the classrooms. Boston College took them all down, in the, mid 80s, and Catholics did nothing, at Boston College. They didn't rise up and say, get that cross back up in my classroom. We've been too easy. Yeah, wanting to be invited to the barbecue. The hell with a barbecue. We'll have our own barbecues, and we tell the parents, your child is going to be in our hands for 4 years, and we are going to ensure that the Catholic Catechism will be front and center, that biblical truth will be right out there in their lives every week. And these are your own kids. Success is less important than spiritual health. Not bread alone. All right. Drop the whole achieve success narrative. It's producing unhappy human beings.
Mark Bauerlein, we have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we could talk to you for hours, brother. Real quick, where could folks go? First things, your social media, get a lot more information about what we're talking about, and a lot of other things.
Sure. Firstthings.com. Go to the media page. Look at the podcasts that we do. You can look me on Twitter, Mark Bauerlein. Just put me in the search page. That will come up. And subscribe to the magazine. It'll be good for you.
There you go. And we need to start doing things in America that are good for us. Mark Bauerlein, thank you so much. And needless to say, brother, you are welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe anytime. We'd love to have you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Our pleasure. Thank you all out there for joining us on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Download the app, share it with your friends, and please, 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 please share this video if you're watching it on X, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rumble, wherever you see it. Just hit that button and share it because it's an important conversation. Mark Bauerlein, thank you again. And remember, until the next time, everyone, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.